Greetings and good day. This is the Channeled Truth. I'm your host, Thomas Leichardt. I'm a channeler myself, and I love exploring the works of Seth and Jane Roberts, Abraham-Hicks, and Bashar, as channeled by Darryl Anka. With me today, I have a very special guest who is an artist and definitely a fellow explorer in the spiritual arts, and a huge enthusiast of Bashar and the Bashar channelings. So allow me to welcome Paula to our digital stage. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Today we are going to talk about the subject of open contact. And this is something Bashar talks about a lot. And we're going to broaden this not only to contact with extraterrestrial entities, but also extra-dimensional entities, because contact is also happening very much in spiritual terms as much as it will be happening in physical terms, right? So it's a very exciting topic for both of us, and we're each of us having unique experiences that are leading up to this open window. Bashar defines it as 2023, which is already next year from this time-space coordinate, and leading all the way up to 2040, right? This open window of contact is when we have the highest probability for some kind of beginning of official open contact with other extraterrestrial civilizations, right? So that's just around the corner. And there has been a lot of acceleration of energy and experiences in a lot of domains, right? The spiritual domain, as well as physically sightings and whatnot. Of course, even in the media, we see kind of a frenzy lately all about UFOs coming to the surface. So yeah, welcome, Paula. I know you've had some experiences and some thoughts about this, so I'm going to open it up to you now.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having me. As far as experiences, yeah, it's definitely been a crazy ride, as I'm sure it has been for you as well. For me personally, I feel like everything really opened up in April of this year when I had my private channeling. Um, it just really took it up to a whole other level, and yeah, things have been happening for me.
Great. So can you share a little bit about some of the experiences that you've been having, or what perhaps what happened in that channeling session, just to open things up?
So for me, when I had that channeling session, it just kind of made everything real. I mean, I think a lot of people that follow Bashar are obviously very familiar with channeling and so forth. But when you have like a private channeling, it just, for me at least, it just really brought it down to earth, so to speak, and made it more real. Like I can just, contact these entities myself. And yeah, after that, it was a lot of contact with nature, with certain animals coming across my path, hummingbirds, as you know. Other caterpillar was here the other day. Praying mantis, just these animals have always been around, especially where I live in California, but I've never like come in contact with them. And I remember Bashar saying that hummingbirds specifically are supposed to symbolize higher consciousness. So that's been happening. I've been having a lot of dreams about animal encounters, like wanting to come into my home, wanting to connect. After that, it was a lot of elemental energies, a lot of dreams. I get flashbacks of like snippets of, I guess, encounters. I'm not really sure yet, but I assume that's what they are. And like I just told you in private, I guess, experienced a glitch of some sort last night for the first time, where I was able to see like a projection of my cat in front of me, like an astral projection almost. And then see her in the flash, like right, like a second after. So yeah, these things have been happening, and I think it's just, it's true what they say: when you raise your consciousness, you really just open yourself up to other contacts, right? And it just happens, I find.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned the elemental energies because that is something in the last several years that's really been coming in strong for me as well. I'll have an experience, I'm working in the garden, and then I'll start having, in my meditations, I'll start experiencing elemental energies, right? And that's part of the contact as well. It's not just, oh, it's UFOs, right? It's so much more than that. And even our understanding of UFOs, even that, it goes beyond what we think that we know, right? Because a lot of these craft are extra dimensional craft. Sometimes it's the way our physical minds translate the, so to speak, intrusion of extra dimensional energy into our domain, right? Sometimes they are actual physical craft, but also how we connect with nature, right? And nature spirits. And just the ability to see that we are surrounded, we're swimming in a multi-dimensional field of consciousness. And while we have as a culture really fine-tuned our physical awareness, now that's beginning to open up. And we're starting to see, contacts with spirits of the dead, for example, contacts with extra-dimensional entities, as in channeling. And like you said, like you shared, seeing the form of your cat, right? I know that when certain pets have passed away, I have interacted with their astral forms as well, right? And it's very real, it's very visceral, and at the same time, it's extra dimensional, right? So it's happening at a higher frequency domain. So all these experiences, I feel like, are very much accelerating in our civilization, and it's very exciting, right?
It is very exciting, but it was funny to me because just what you said, when we think about projections or ghosts, we think about, people or beings that have passed on. Whereas, my cat is very much here, obviously. So it was strange for me to see her projection, like in 1 second, but then have her run up to me in the flesh, so to speak, the next moment, right? So I feel like that was, maybe seeing like a parallel reality or something like that. Lifting the veil, definitely seeing into the matrix, something along those lines. Um, so I think it just like, it just literally happens on its own now, and it's it's like an everyday thing. And yeah, it is very exciting because I feel like we're opening that door to other just ways of existence.
Yes, yeah, and just these experiences, they really help us to see there's so much more to life than we have been taught to believe is real and is true in our civilization and our upbringing, right? So it's we're realizing we're in this incredible matrix of energy that is so much beyond just those five senses that we've gotten accustomed to. So very exciting times indeed, right? And we often speak of raising vibrations as a way, as kind of the metaphor for how we begin to perceive more and more. And there's definitely ways to raise our frequency. So I was wondering if perhaps you can share some ways that have been working for you or that have been happening in your life of how you're raising your frequency.
So I think for me, the most important thing is working on negative belief systems. I think that's probably the biggest thing I would say, because I think naturally your vibration is high. I think that's true for everybody. And it's obviously our conditioning that, keeps it low or locks it in, right? So for me, it was definitely, letting go of negative, limited, ancient belief systems, probably. That was the biggest thing for me. Obviously, acting on your excitement also raises your vibration. It also brings up the things that are out of alignment. So that's another great integration process, right? Um, and just, it's really simple, I think. Just follow what you love, do what you love. Take care of yourself, take care of yourself mentally, physically. And I don't think it's really that hard. I think it's just about undoing everything that's in the way, so to speak.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's more of a process of unlearning what we have learned, because we already naturally are extra dimensional beings having a human experience, right? So it's lifting the veils, it's unlearning, right? It reminds me of a Rumi quote when, he talks about how you're not here to seek for love, you're here to seek out and find all the barriers that you have built up against it, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, and so that formula that Bashar gives us, right? Acting on our passion to the best of our ability, taking it as far as we can, and having no insistence on the outcome and staying in a positive state no matter what happens, right? That is basically it, right? So you said it's really simple, right? And so, yeah, it comes down to these four steps, right?
The steps are simple. The process is not always simple, right? What do you find has been like the most challenging for you?
It's pretty much the same. It's the belief matrices, right? Because the beliefs, the way they're built in, is they perpetuate themselves, right? So once you lock into a certain thing and believe it to be true, it tends to confirm itself, right? It's like this kind of confirmation bias, right? Where every time that something happens that you can label as, oh, this is confirming the belief, that just keeps it perpetuating and moving forward, right? So you get locked into this matrix of beliefs, and it's not just one negative belief, it's many, right? And so you're kind of bouncing around. I always have the image of like a pinball, right? Bouncing around into all those little boom, 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 and just hitting all these negative beliefs, and then you're in the matrix, right? And you believe all of it is true, so you just assume that's just the way things are. And then you just kind of give up your idea of liberation even, right? So deconstructing one by one, right? And when you follow that formula precisely, it will start bringing up all these beliefs to the surface. And that is the most challenging part for me, right? Because, yeah, we all love riding the top of the wave and just being in this exalted state of connection and contact with more of ourselves, layers of consciousness. But then when it starts to press against our limitations and our negative filters and they start coming to the surface, I would say that's definitely the most challenging part of it, right?
Yeah, sure. So how do you go about it then? Like what is your process? Like what advice would you give somebody who's going through that? Because we all are, I think, right?
Yeah, consciously or unconsciously, right? The main thing is just to be consciously aware that there are tools, right? And
Mhm.
just just a simple question of, is that really true, right? Or is this
Mhm.
something I'm buying into, right? One of the things
Mhm.
Bashar gave a long, long time ago was this asking, or this is something he's consistently really given throughout many of his transmissions, is you ask yourself, what would I have to believe is true in order to be feeling these things, thinking these things, or acting these things out, or getting this kind of reflection in my physical reality? What would I have to believe is true about myself and this situation to be where I'm at, right? And to
Mhm.
question that and using physical reality as a reflective mirror for, oh, this is what I believe, what would I have to believe to have this kind of feeling experience, right? Because our feelings are generated by our beliefs. Our thoughts are generated by our beliefs. Our actions are generated by our beliefs. And also, the reflection that we get is also a reflection of our beliefs, right? So it's really having the knack to pause in
Mhm.
consciousness, right? To pause instead of reacting, instead of assuming something is true, right? And perpetuating it. So that really is, it kind of breaks that link of of the belief just reinforcing itself.
I agree. And I think I don't know how it is for you, but for me sometimes like the more you do belief work, the more, eventually you get to a point where like everything connects, the whole structure of existence, so to speak, and it's much easier to see it and to measure your beliefs against that and let go of them. But there's also been times for me where it was almost like banging my head against the wall, like just willfully trying to figure out the structure of this belief. And then one day it just happens. And I don't know why it is that way sometimes. I do remember Bashar said something like that every belief actually creates a certain pathway in your brain. And I think, I think if you change beliefs or you adopt new beliefs or you let go of the old beliefs, it's almost like the wiring sometimes isn't yet there, and you have to like make it be there. I don't know if that's the right word, but um and it's actually like it's very exhausting work, right? It can
Yeah,
be like energetically.
yeah. The resistance itself is exhausting, right? Because we're kind
Mhm.
of like in this resistive state, and we're also starting to run our energy at a higher level, and so we feel the sense of
Yeah.
exhaustion, right? As our energy is attempting to push against this belief, as we're stretching and expanding in consciousness, right? So yeah, and as we go into resistance, right, and we're trying to force it to happen, make it happen, right? All of that is exhausting. Right? But it
Yeah.
does get easier, like you said. After a while, you kind of start to rest in the structure of existence supporting you, and you can begin to identify things as beliefs more, and then you're not caught in it so much or for so long, and
Right.
then it starts to flow. There's more effortlessness involved. But yeah, it's like rest. It's you're kind of like taking off a jacket that's too tight, right? Sometimes I think of these beliefs almost like straitjackets, right? You're so bound
Mm.
up in it, and then you're just kind of shaking yourself loose, and coming out of that shell, right? That's why the snake shedding his skin is such a powerful metaphor for us, right? So yeah, and it's a process, like you said. It definitely gets easier over time.
Yes, definitely.
And I like what you said about the neuroplasticity, right? It's like literally we're building new neural pathways in the brain, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that means you have to take a pause, right? You do a lot of intense work, and sometimes you have to allow things to slow down so that your physical body can, so to speak, catch up a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very important. And there's like a ebb and flow to this, right? Like sometimes it's like time to be like very high. I mean, it's always time to be high energy, but you know what I mean? To like ride that wave. And then sometimes you just need to like come down a little bit and just like anchor the new energies. Um,
Yeah, I feel like we have visionary experiences. We ride into that peak of the wave, and then at some point, it's time to integrate it and ground it into all the different aspects of our consciousness, of our personality matrix. And so we have to
right.
drop that energy into all the different aspects of the personality that might still be holding on to negative beliefs. And then
Mhm.
that's why we feel the sense of like, oh, it seems like a drop in energy. It seems like I'm going backwards. It seems like I'm dropping into density again. Well, because in a manner of speaking, you are, because that's the process of bringing that visionary energy back into the personality so you can integrate all of you into that energy field, right? So it's not an interruption in the flow, it's part of the flow when we experience that dip, and then we have the opportunity to work through whatever the next filters for transformation are.
Yes, that's very true. And the cool thing is, once you let go of a certain belief, um, I mean, it's literally like stepping into a new reality instantaneously. That's what I notice. Because usually the beliefs I'm working on are things that are actively playing in my life at the time. Especially now, like you said, the energy is so elevated that it's really just smacking you in the face, so to speak, if something is out of alignment. Um, but yeah, it's really it's really kind of crazy to see just once you really have that belief that causes that and you work that out, it just the situation on the external just literally changes overnight. At least for me, that's what I notice.
Yeah, it's literally like stepping into a new reality, right? As
It
soon as
is.
we take off that particular straitjacket, that particular negative filter, it's like literally like we're seeing the world with new eyes. And we're a new
Mhm.
version of ourselves experiencing the world now through it's like a different program's running. We're in a different reality, literally. And that's what Bashar says. We're literally shifting billions of times a second, click, 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 constantly shifting, right? But when we shift a belief, we really feel that we feel that nature of the shift because we're shifting to something new. When we don't change a belief, we just keep shifting, but we keep shifting to more of the same, right? So it just feels, oh, I'm stuck, right? Well, no, you're still changing, but you're changing to more of the same, right? But as soon as you shift that belief, now you step into a new reality and everything, it's like a rebirth, right? It's very, very powerful.
It is. And speaking of shifting, I find that lately it's become very things are obviously not as dense anymore as they used to be. And I think this we have way more consciousness about shifting and what we shift to and the things that we are shifting to. Like there's so many reflections of that as well, whether it's elementals, in movies and pop culture or UFOs or just even very simple concepts like law of attraction, for instance, right? Like it seems so, like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in a reality where it's so commonplace now. It's like the normal, whereas 10 years ago it was like the small group, that did that was interested in those things. So I think also it's just becoming way more fluid and way more open. And I think we have access to different realities, as we go.
Yeah, I definitely agree that in the past it used to be, I felt like the Lone Ranger for many, many years. And then maybe a person or two, you find them. But now it's the awakening is such that, yeah, it feels like there's this huge collective momentum now interested. And it is showing up, right? Not only in our movies and pop cultures, like you said, but also just like we've seen the media frenzy of the UFO sightings, right? People are opening up to even physical sightings now, as well as more experiences, you know, experiences of seeing and witnessing spirits of the dead, right? Very, very common now. Whereas back in the day, it's like, it was kind of like woo woo if you even mentioned it. But now it's starting to really seep in as, it's becoming more commonplace. And I believe there's pockets, right? Like you and I are in these pockets of people that are always talking about experiences that they've had. And so it starts to feel more normal for us. Whereas there's going to be pockets of the collective consciousness where that's still very restricted and restrained, right? So I feel like as we move into open contact, we create these pockets, these bubble realities that are of a higher frequency, and we're reflecting more of these, sharing these experiences with one another and helping one another kind of in lockstep, together shifting that frequency, creating that bubble. And, the open contact, I believe it's going to start happening in these small bubble enclaves, so to speak, energetic enclaves, and then it's just going to keep expanding and expanding into our entire collective field of consciousness as a culture.
Sure, yes. But it's funny, couple years ago, I felt like the whole idea of open contact was like this big shiny thing at the end of the tunnel, that we're all striving towards. But now I look at it like much differently. I think it's really just about contact with yourself and your own self, your own higher self, your own consciousness. That's really what it's about, right? I mean, even all these other entities, whether they're extraterrestrial or dimensional, it's, they're just reflecting you to you, right? So, um, I think, yeah, for me at this point, it's really more about having contact with yourself, opening up all of that. And then everything else is just kind of like a nice bonus almost, and it just kind of happens on its own, I noticed.
Yes, it's a reflection, right? And so I'm glad you brought this in because this is a very powerful concept and idea. Is open contact is, like you said, I fully 100% agree. It's about contact with more of ourselves, right? And so whether we encounter extraterrestrials, extra dimensionals, what we're actually contacting is it's more of ourselves, right? And many of these encounters that we have in dream time and in these altered states of consciousness, we're interacting with reflections of ourselves, very often counterparts or extensions of our own oversouls experiencing other lives in these other dimensions and in other civilizations, right? And the encounters that I have had in these mystical, non-physical, visionary states, deep meditation states, and or out-of-body experiences, they really come with the frequency of I'm encountering something that is an extension of myself, right? And I feel like open contact out there, out here in the physical world, that's just going to be a reflection of all these contact experiences we're having with more of ourselves. And as we recognize that we are multidimensional beings, then we start having those reflections that we are part of a much vaster experience out there because we're allowing it to happen in here.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree.
Great. Well, perhaps to shift gears a little bit, I'll share one experience I've had was I like myself, I wasn't really looking for anything ET related at all. I was more into the extra dimensional, the out of body experiences, and how can we live our lives and ground this energy here physically to ground the passion, right? That's what drew me to Bashar, is he's all about acting on our passion, right? And I wanted to live a life full of passion, and it was that simple, right? And the whole ET thing, it just kind of, it rubbed off on me eventually. But then I
Mhm.
started having experiences, right? It's like Bashar says, when you really implement the formula, it kind of finds you. I wasn't looking
Mhm.
for it. I thought, wow, that's like an interesting thing. At first, when I met Bashar, I was like, well, I like that he's channeling, but I don't know about this ET stuff, right? Then it
Right.
kind of went into, oh, that's kind of neat, right? And then it
Mhm.
went into like, oh my God, it's like really seeping into my experience, right? So yeah, definitely the frequency of that, it comes in waves, but it definitely has increased as like, wow, these contact experiences, for me, they're starting to really happen in these altered
Mhm.
states, shifted states of consciousness. So yeah, I wanted to open that up, and perhaps you have some more experiences you want to share as well.
Yeah, I've actually had a pretty parallel experience of this to you. For me, it also started, I came across Bashar maybe 12 years ago, quite a while ago. And for me, at that time, it was just mostly like self-help type of a thing. I didn't know who he was, what he was. I remember the first video. He just sounded so convinced of himself that I was just like, okay, I have to listen to him. Um, it just sounded like he was telling the truth, even though I couldn't really understand it yet. But yeah, that's how it started for me, was just basically, it was, about uh raising my own consciousness, I guess, and learning more about myself. And the fact that he was an ET really didn't like mean much to me at the time. I just felt like I was getting more information from him than from, say, like a human teacher. So I continued listening. Um, but then, yeah, I wasn't really thinking about contact or whatever. And I remember back then, I think the timeline was different. He was saying something about open contact being like 2035 to 45 or something like that, in the 30s. And I just remember thinking like, that's so far away, it's like I wasn't even thinking about it like an actual reality, like a potential, reality for me. Um and then but then yeah, like you do all this inner work and you raise your frequency, and then all of a sudden it does become real and it does happen. Um and also the timeline has shifted, right, to 2023. So now it's very much real and it's very much right around the corner. And it's like this paradox now, right? Like what I just said, it's, to me, it's almost like like that, like I care obviously about contact. I want it. At the same time, like it's more about having contact with myself, having a great relationship with myself. And it's like it just converges now, it comes full circle.
Yeah, I totally agree. It always comes back to more contact with more of ourselves, and that's what draws me to the spiritual path in the first place.
Sure.
And everything else is just, it's icing on the cake, right? But it really does bring in the great mystery of it all, right? And I'm constantly having to just step into the mystery, right? When I started having experiences on board craft that were so super real, I started
Mhm.
realizing that there's something going on here. It's not just Bashar talking about contact. It's like, well, now I'm experiencing this, right? It's something that's part of my reality. And it's like I'm very, as those that have been following me for a while, I've been doing dream work for a long, long time. So, I have a pretty good awareness of, what's a psychological processing dream, what's an out of body experience, what's a lucid dream, what's, different types of dreams out there, precognitive dreams, parallel life dreams, all that stuff, right? And then I had started having these contact experiences that was like, it was so super real that like I can tell there's substance to this, right? And it is some place that we're headed as a culture. And it absolutely fascinates me and it inspires me. But at the same time, it comes back to, like you said, all that's great, but it's still all about the self-work, breaking through the limitations of the beliefs and the restraints and contacting more of ourselves, right? That really is the most exciting. And everything else, it'll find you anyway, right? That's the
Yeah,
great part.
right. It really does. And but I think it's both, I think obviously first and foremost it is about you and your own evolution, right? But also, I do think we have certain appointments. I think people, especially in this group, most likely most of them do have appointments. I feel that way for sure. I feel like, I can't put my finger on it, what they are or where they will lead to or whatever. I don't know, but it's just a very strong feeling I have. So, and I think all the stuff we've been doing has been preparation work, for that.
Yeah, I agree. The appointments have been made in non-physical, right? And as we raise our frequency, it's like we catch up to this stuff. I have a good friend that often refers to it as like, oh, it's already done. It's just, we just have to catch up to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like a lot of these experiences, it's already there. It's already, because all time is simultaneous, right? And it's like we're just having that experience of opening up to it, catching up to it, becoming it, right? Because we're in an experience of becoming in time-space reality. We're opening up to more of ourselves. But these contacts, these experiences, these relationships, they already exist, right? And we don't have to go and try to make it happen. We just open up to it and it's already there, right?
Yes. Yes, I definitely think that. And I think it's basically one big giant orchestration that we're all part of. And, and I guess we'll see where things go, right?
Exactly. Yeah, synchronicity is something we talked about on the last show, right? Episode 5. So that definitely happens, right? It's like that grand orchestration of everything. It has its own perfect timing, right? So that's the beauty of it. We don't have to try to make it happen, force it to happen, like spend a lot of time just like wondering, is it going to happen? All we have to do is follow the formula and really act on our passion, ground our passion, because passion is the translations of our soul's energy into physical terms. Ground that through action and then just let it unfold. Allow it to unfold, right? That's the beauty of it, was we can relax into the unfolding, just like a rose knows it's going to unfold in its own time. It's the same thing, right? It's not, we don't have to hassle it, stress it, or wish it would happen. We are it, right? And just ground that passion, right? So speaking of passion, I wanted to open it up. If you have any projects or anything you've been thinking about as a way of grounding your passion into this dimension.
So there's a couple things that I'm working on. One of the things that I've really been getting into lately is connecting with nature. And it's actually one of my excitements to manifest a home with like a very specific garden, or not specific, but a garden, a big, huge garden where I'd like to grow things, food and trees. And I really would like to deepen my connection with nature and animals. Another thing I'm thinking of starting, which I have not done yet, but I'm thinking of doing a podcast um, where I would interview other entities, extra dimensional and terrestrial beings. And then, just painting, I guess. I'm big into painting, so I definitely want to continue on that path. But for me, I mean, right now, I don't know if I should call this my excitement, but I feel like right now my biggest thing is just finishing this transformation, which I'm almost done with. Um, that's really the only goal for me right now. And then I think everything else will come from that.
As I understanding you saying, you mean the transformation of just letting go of some of these old belief structures. You still feel like you're dealing with a pocket of that, right?
It's really the last bits for me. I feel like I don't have much to go, so I prefer to finish that first. Um, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, when I feel like something is out of alignment, I feel it like in my body and in my consciousness, and I just have this urge to just like transform it, and bring it back into alignment. So I have that very strong urge now to do that. But like I said, that's for me, that's almost done. And my next steps after that I see would be getting involved in more personal projects. But I think all of that will unfold as we go. I don't know if I can really give too many details at this point.
Right, and I can definitely relate because I go through periods where I kind of feel like it's time for me to slow down, to hunker down, go through kind of a hibernation period externally and pull
Mhm.
back from my creative projects and really go into that cocoon of just like working through something. And it's almost like that's taking up so much energy
Yeah.
that, there isn't much energy flowing out because, like one of the episodes we did, with Andra, right? We're talking about like, slowing down to speed up, right? There's these periods where it's like you just like you're turning on something, you're kind of wiggling your way out of an old snake skin, so to speak, and you're like, that's what's important, right? And then that process, you feel like it has a beginning, it has an ending, and then you'll shift, and then things start opening up. You experience the springtime again. So I could totally relate to that. And I'm also excited for these projects, right? I'd love to see more of your art. Hopefully, you can post some of that on the Bashar list, perhaps. And the podcast, right? Like I'm a channeler, right? So I'll show up and channel on your
Yeah.
show, and I'm
That
sure
would
there's
be
a,
great.
I'm sure there's a number of other people from the Bashar list that would love to do that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's an idea at this point, but I think I don't know. I'm excited about it. It speaks to me. It's almost like it's telling me to do it, you know? And but again, it's something that came to me very, very recently. So I think there's a timing and a flow to everything. I think this would not have occurred to me even 3 months ago. So there really is such a flow. It's just like he says, right? Excitement is really an organizing principle, and when the time is right, the information that you need will come to you, and the inspiration and the ideas and everything. So it's I definitely see that working in my life.
Yes, and I see that too because I almost feel like when we act on our passion and we really say yes to our creative energy, it's like we step onto a whole new platform and we live life from that level, right? And then all of a sudden we can see the next platform, right? Because now we're on this
Right.
platform, but we don't see it if we don't take those first initial steps and then we don't break through and let go of those filters, right? So yeah, it's like step upon a step, right? You don't see the next platform till you're on this one, and then when you choose to step onto that one, then more will be revealed, right? You'll know what you need to know when you need to know it, right?
Exactly. And I think you're very right about that. When you change, you also change your possibilities, right? And probabilities. And so it's like every belief that you transform opens up new doorways to you, right? And who knows? Who knows where things will go?
Yeah, I feel like we're swimming in a sea of probabilities, and each action that we take completely rearranges the probability field, right? So if we say no to our creative energy, well, the probabilities are going to stay relatively the same. And if we keep the same old filters, it's like we have the same doors, right? And most of, they're locked in certain ways and open in other ways. And as soon as we say yes to our creative energy, we shift our frequency. It's like the whole probability matrix rearranges itself, and boom, new opportunities open up, new ideas come in. And it's like Bashar says, we cannot perceive what we're not the vibration of, right? So we have to step into that vibration by taking the action, and doorways just open, and it's amazing, right? Like
It
I'm
really
doing
is.
things, yeah, I'm doing things now that like I didn't know I was going to be doing, right? Just as you, yeah, you're seeing these new ideas that, 3 months ago you haven't seen, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's I think it's always, it really doesn't take much to open that door either, I noticed, right? Like, um, even if, because like I said, for me, I've definitely had periods where I did shut that door because I needed to like time to integrate and ground, the energies and stuff. But it really doesn't take much to get stirred up again and to open that door. And as soon as you decide to, everything just comes flooding back in, So I think that's the cool part. And yeah, and I think we also, because of the work we're doing, we're opening pathways to very magical different things, that have not really been done before, in our society at this point so much. So it's very interesting to me to see where things will go.
Yeah, it's so exciting because we're really shifting into a whole new type of civilization. I feel like we're just in this incredible pivotal time. Like one thing that comes to me is we're shifting out of a fear-based reality into a love-based reality. And that is a profound, profound shift that, we're talking about like a millennial or multi-millennial shift. And
Right.
it's powerful. And here we are, we get to witness it. We get to participate in it by grounding this energy of passion and just keep doing it, right?
Right.
And letting go of the old and stepping into the new. Super, super exciting. So Paula, thank you so much for being here on the show. We really, I appreciate you. I'm sure the viewers appreciate you. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing your insights. Definitely look forward to hearing what happens with your projects, your show. Hopefully, we'll see more of your art. And to our viewers, thank you for being here. We certainly hope this episode helps you to shift into more and greater versions of yourself. May it help you to expand, to contact more and more of your true natural self. And with that, we will then sign off and see you in the next episode.